So currently I'm the executive director of a non-profit called Hindu Action, and I have decided to work on this for the upcoming future, and architecture is now a profession that I used to practice for more than 22 years. I'm really thankful to both Richaji and Priya Saha for covering the parts of history of Bengal that I will skip over, because those are some of the most important periods. And I also want to thank Priya Saha for making such a tremendous effort over the last 5 years, single-handedly. And it was my good fortune to be helping her out in this, to get the 1971 Genocide resolution introduced in the US Congress last year. And this is the first genocide resolution on Hindus in the history of America. And not only that, this is the first time in 20 years that anything regarding Hindus has been discussed. India-US relations are quite regularly discussed, but this is the first time. So thank you, Priyadi, for doing it. We are trying again, as she mentioned. So just to go back and take a quick look at this part of the world. See, Bengal is very unique because for the longest period of time, Bengal and the lower Ganga region, Bengal is just a name. It's a geographical region that spreads across what is present-day Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, and all those regions. The lower Ganga region of the world has been the world's most densely populated region for the longest period of time. So, anywhere in the world. And there is a reason for that. It's also one of the most fertile regions of the world that can support the highest density of population. And I'm giving this perspective because what Richaji covered during the British famine and what Priyaji covered are very much relevant to that piece of information. So here I just quickly go through a very, going back 3,000 years, zooming it out. Historically, Bengal has been involved in some of the greatest empires in the region. Patliputra, many of you know, was the capital of the world's largest empire that even Alexander the Great could not conquer. So that's the historical background of that region. But Bengal, since the 11th century, was also very unique in becoming the eastern citadel of Islamism. And when the caliphate started to grow since the 7th century, Bengal, by virtue of its location and the value of its region, became a citadel for Islamism in the Asian region. And what you see here in the map, this is the overall map of India. This is the population of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent region. And as you can see, the entire central part of India, you see the Pakistan, which is on the west, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. That's fully Muslim. And then you see the rest of India in between, which is not Islamized. And then you see the small pocket in Bengal, which is fully Islamic. And there's a reason for that. That's because it was the gateway, as later on the British, the Dutch, and the Portuguese figured out, to northern India and eventually to the rest of Indian trade routes over rivers. So it is a very strategically important place. And the conquest of Bengal by Islam is in itself a story that can be related. But this is a human rights conference, so I'm not going to that, and I'm going to breeze through these slides. Going back to the creation of Bengal, the documentary that Priya Saha showed covered it in a little bit, so I'm going to also go pretty fast over it. Bengal was created, Bangladesh was created, or at that time East Pakistan was created because the Muslim majority in that small pocket that I just showed decided to create a separate country along with the Muslim majority of the West, which is Pakistan, claiming that they cannot coexist with any other religion in their official document. And what you see here is some of the pictures, some of the cover of the Time magazine with the creator of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, with the map of India, with the tiger on one side and a lion on the other side, trying to eat India. This is just the overall geography of what is present-day Bangladesh. This is the part that we need to look at more carefully because this feeds into the overall collapsing demography of Hindus in what is present-day Bangladesh. Since 1946, since the Direct Action Day started and mass riots were happening all throughout the eastern part of India as well as the western part of India, there has been no respite for the Hindus of Bengal since those days. And even though in the western part of India there was a shock and awe campaign by Islamists and the entire Hindu and the Sikh population was moved out of what is present-day western Pakistan, in the eastern part, what was then East Pakistan, this was more of a simmering boil. And as you can see in this data, I know it's very small, so not easy to read, we have year-by-year breakdown of East Pakistan from 1951 to 1970, and some details of the riots, and the number of refugees that are officially documented by East Pakistan, Hindu refugees, from each of these riots. The real numbers are actually quite high, but I intentionally used official Pakistani numbers because even Pakistanis can't refute that. And here are some pictures. The picture you see on the top left is actually very unique. And I put it there because this riot happened in 1964 and 1965 because somebody claimed that the hair of Prophet Muhammad went missing from the Hazrat Bal Mosque in Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir. They used that excuse of a supposed hair of Prophet Muhammad missing from a mosque in Kashmir to wipe out 200,000 Hindus in Bangladesh. And that's the relevance of what I'm trying to explain here. So, as Priya Saha covered the 1971 genocide, which was the fastest murder of 3 million people recorded in the 20th century. Within a period of 10 months, by the Bangladesh government's own admission, 3 million people were killed, and as Priya mentioned, 2.8 million of them were Hindus. Another 10 million were rendered as refugees in India. And what you see here is that it didn't stop there. It continued after that. So after a small respite of about 4 years, from 1971 to 1975, Bangladesh went back into the hands of the Islamists through a military coup, and the government that subsequently came decided to continue to Islamize the country and continue to push the Hindus out from that country. And for that entire period from 1975 all the way up to 1998, this was a steady boil. And you know, I show this picture of Congressman Robert Dole from Illinois, who actually went on record in the US Congress saying that 49 million Hindus are missing from the population data of Bangladesh if the average population growth was projected to be what it was since 1951. That's a number that has either migrated to India or been forced to migrate to India, killed, or forcibly converted. And what you see here in these graphs, there's a lot of details. I'm going to put this in the report that you guys will publish. But essentially what you see is the slow and steady wiping out of the Hindu minority of Bangladesh. Even when there are periods of peace in the country, which have been quite long sometimes, and even when the government, which is in Bangladesh, is trying to help secure the minority rights, the overall dispensation of the population and the influence of radical Islamists in their minds leads to such a simmering violence that literally year after year, day after day, Hindus are being forced to leave and migrate to India. So there have been a lot of studies that have been done, and I include those studies in this report. So one of the studies that has been done by Professor Abul Barkat of Dhaka University actually shows that the Vested Property Act or the Enemy Property Act, which was a law created during the East Pakistan era in 1965, which essentially targeted Hindus to emigrate and take away their land. And that law eventually got removed in 2012, but there has been no proper implementation of the law. And I say that is because Hindus who have left Bangladesh cannot go back anymore, and therefore they cannot claim any of the land again. And there has been no effort to actually do it. So one of the things I would suggest all of us here is to take up issues like this, make a movement out of it. Because if you are losing millions of acres of land worth millions of dollars in that part of the world, which as I described is one of the most fertile, as a community, Hindus should reclaim those lands. And that would be a movement that would bring us strategic benefit going forward in the future, now that this law has been removed. Again, this is some of the census data that I'm pointing out here. And as you can see, in 1901, the region that is present in Bangladesh used to have 33% Hindu population. The region, it was part of the British ruled area. In 1971, which was actually tabulated and published in 74, the Hindus were 13.5% of the population. That is after the genocide they faced already and the atrocities they faced at the hands of East Pakistan Army. But if you go to 2011, it's only 8.5%. So from 1971 to 2011, in the so-called era of non-genocide in Bangladesh, this population continues to decline and erode. And in 2022, it is further down, and it is now 7.95% of the population. So, as we speak today, this is continuing to happen, and we all know that in that part of the world, when the Hindu population is diminished and destroyed from a certain region, what the nature of that land and its population becomes. If you don't know that, look at Afghanistan and Taliban. If you don't know that, look at Pakistani Punjab, and you know what it will become. And this is something I say to the US lawmakers and thought leaders, that at least in Afghanistan you can look at things through drones. Here there is so much tree cover you can't even see what's going on. So this is a geopolitical and geostrategic blunder that is eventually unfolding in this part of the world. Not just a human rights issue. So I just wanted to end with a slide that highlights information from all the media outlets that are not ever favorable to the Hindus. And even those media outlets are talking about the collapse of the Hindu population in Bangladesh. And it is important to reiterate that this collapse is not happening because the government wants it to happen or the government doesn't want it to happen. This collapse is happening because the masses are pushing the Hindus out at a grassroots level. This collapse is happening because of the radicalization of the youth in Bangladesh, irrespective of what the government is trying to do, into higher and more aggressive forms of Islamism that is supported by Al-Qaeda, that is supported by ISIS, and it is supported by local radical groups like Jamaat Islami and Tablighi Jamaat. So this kind of a problem is something that is even harder to solve because you just cannot ask a government to solve it. The intervention has to be made at a grassroots level with organizations that are from India or other parts of the world. And that is where our role and our education of the people around the world is important. I leave it at this, and if there are any questions, I can answer it. I don't know how much time I have left.